Now, joining us now is Nadia Whittome, Labour MP for Nottingham East. Nadia, morning to you. Can we call you a rebel? Are you a backbench rebel?
Well, I'd rather not be. I'd rather the government pulled the bill and we didn't have to be in this position. I think MPs from right across the party are furious about being forced to choose between loyalty to our party and loyalty to our constituents, because we'd hoped that those two things would never conflict, especially when it comes to, the fundamentals, the basics. But if our party is being steered down the wrong path, and if it won't listen, then many of us will side with our constituents and with Labour values.
I mean, the government have said they have listened. They've made their concessions from last week. They've actually changed it so those that are on current benefits on PIP won't lose their benefits. And they're saying that there's going to be a review led by Stephen Timms that will tell us exactly how the reform should be done. And that's going to be done in conjunction with disability rights groups. They've made their concessions, and it's you guys now who won't come
the concessions aren't enough, and I think it's very telling that not a single disabled people's organisation supports the bill, even since the concessions. There's a lot that we don't know about how that will work in practice, but what we do know is that anybody scoring less than 4 points in any category in their PIP assessment will not be eligible for support. That includes people who need help cutting up food, need help dressing, washing below the waist. They will no longer be eligible for PIP in future. And by the government's own calculations, that could push 150,000 people into poverty. It's actually likely to be much higher. That is what MPs are voting on today. We're voting on the bill unamended, in a process that is being rushed through Parliament with very little scrutiny.
And Nadia Whittome, I spoke to the Secretary of State, Jonathan Reynolds, earlier, and he just disagrees that 150,000 will push into poverty.
Well, those are the government's own statistics.
He says that there will be extra support that comes in later on in the Parliament that supports
the government hasn't provided the evidence for that. I know that the government will say that even their own statistics are not accurate because it doesn't take account of the number of people who will be helped into work, but the government hasn't provided evidence of how many people will be helped into work, and PIP is not an out-of-work benefit anyway.
Do you accept that the welfare bill has to come down?
I think that, obviously, I want to see fewer people sick, and I think that what Liz Kendall said yesterday at the dispatch box was absolutely right, that there is a clear link between austerity and health inequality, but obviously the conclusion of that is not to make further cuts. That is just going to make the situation worse. The way that we, in the long term, reduce welfare spending is by tackling the root causes of sickness, of poverty and inequality, not cutting people's benefits.
And I know that many of you guys who have signed the amendment, the recent amendment from last week, and perhaps this new one now as well, are concerned about the processing of all of this. Jonathan Reynolds, again, sitting right where you are, said that you've got to tackle it now. You've got to get ahead of it. You've got to start dealing with this problem now because the bill is just too high.
This is a false politically imposed deadline to try to stifle a rebellion, which, as I've said, MPs would rather not be doing anyway. We just want the government to pause this, consult properly with disabled people and come back to the table with a proper proposal that protects people's dignity and supports them. But the process it's a shambles. And MPs, even MPs who are very reluctantly voting with the party out of party loyalty, agree that it's a shambles. We don't have all of the information that we need from the government. No impact assessment, no OBR analysis. The Timms review hasn't been published. The Mayfield review hasn't been published. The government hasn't provided its own projections of. So the government's main argument, right, is that this will help people into work. It hasn't said how many people it expects to be helped into work.
So you think
and actually
lying? Sorry, do you just think they're just lying to you then? Do you think they're just being completely disingenuous about this? Because their argument would be that this has to be done at this point, right now, to make sure that the bill comes down, and then further work will come on once the Timms review is published.
So I can't believe that the government's argument could really be that we need total lack of scrutiny of this bill for it to be rushed forward today, and then next week we have all remaining stages in one single day, instead of over a number of weeks where you'd hear from experts and people with lived experience, to put it in a money bill, which means that it goes through the Lords with very little scrutiny. Money bills are meant to be for things that are uncontroversial. That also sets a dangerous precedent for future governments, because you could argue that anything is a money bill, because anything means the government spending money, and therefore nothing should have proper scrutiny. What we're voting on today is the bill as it stands, and the government can't even make the argument that there's scope to change it in remaining stages.
There's a question about
that's happening in 8 days in one single day.